In the middle of the 14th century, Europe stood on the edge of transformation without knowing it. Kingdoms were rising, trade routes were expanding, and cities were growing crowded with merchants, craftsmen, and pilgrims. Life was fragile but familiar, guided by faith, tradition, and the rhythms of agriculture. Then, sometime in the 1340s, an invisible enemy began moving silently across continents. It traveled not with armies or banners, but hidden within fleas carried by rats, moving along the vast trade networks that connected Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. What followed would become one of the deadliest catastrophes in human history, a pandemic later known as the Black Death. The disease was caused by a bacterium now called Yersinia pestis. It likely emerged in Central Asia, where changing climate conditions and expanding trade routes brought humans, rodents, and fleas into closer contact. Merchant caravans unknowingly carried the infection westward along the Silk Road. By 1346, the plague had reached major trading ports near the Black Sea. From there, ships filled with grain, textiles, and sailors sailed toward the Mediterranean, unknowingly transporting death in their cargo holds. When these ships arrived in European ports, many crew members were already sick or dying. Within days, cities began to experience a terrifying new illness. The symptoms were sudden and brutal. Victims developed fever, chills, weakness, and painful swellings known as buboes, which appeared in the neck, armpits, and groin. Dark patches formed on the skin as internal bleeding occurred, giving rise to the later name, Black Death. Many victims died within 3 to 5 days. Medieval medicine had no understanding of bacteria or infection. Doctors blamed bad air, planetary alignment, or divine punishment. Treatments ranged from herbal remedies to bloodletting, none of which slowed the disease. Fear spread faster than knowledge. By 1347, the plague had reached Italy. Within months, it exploded across Europe. Florence, Venice, and Genoa became centers of devastation as trade and dense populations accelerated transmission. Chroniclers described streets filled with the sick and dying. Bells rang constantly for funerals until there were too many dead to bury individually. Mass graves became common. Families abandoned infected relatives out of fear, while others locked themselves indoors, hoping isolation would save them. Society began to fracture under the weight of terror. The disease moved relentlessly north and west. France, Spain, England, and the German states fell one after another. Rural villages suffered as badly as great cities. In some regions, entire communities disappeared. Farms were left untended, animals wandered freely, and food shortages followed. Historians estimate that between 1347 and 1351, the Black Death killed roughly 1/3 to 1/2 of Europe's population, tens of millions of people. The scale of death was so vast that it reshaped the psychological landscape of an entire generation. Religious life intensified as people searched for meaning. Many believed the plague was divine punishment for human sin. Public processions and acts of repentance became common. Groups known as flagellants traveled from town to town, whipping themselves in attempts to atone for humanity's wrongdoing. At the same time, fear and desperation fueled persecution. Minority communities, particularly Jewish populations, were falsely accused of causing the plague by poisoning wells. Violence and massacres followed, revealing how crisis can amplify prejudice and fear. Medical understanding remained limited, yet some observations hinted at early public health measures. Certain cities attempted quarantines, isolating arriving ships or travelers for 40 days before allowing entry. Though imperfect, these efforts sometimes reduced transmission and became the foundation for future disease control practices. Slowly, communities began to recognize patterns of contagion, even without understanding the underlying science. Economically, the consequences were profound. With so many workers dead, labor suddenly became scarce. Survivors found their work more valuable. Peasants demanded higher wages and better conditions, challenging the rigid feudal system that had dominated medieval society for centuries. Landowners struggled to maintain control as social mobility increased. In England and elsewhere, governments attempted to freeze wages, leading to unrest and uprisings. The plague did not merely kill individuals, it weakened long-standing social hierarchies. Culturally, the presence of death became unavoidable. Art and literature reflected a new awareness of mortality. Images of skeletons, decaying bodies, and the dance of death appeared across Europe, reminding viewers that death spared no one, rich or poor, king or peasant. This confrontation with mortality changed how people viewed life, faith, and the future. Some turned toward deeper spirituality, while others embraced earthly pleasures, believing life could end at any moment. Despite the devastation, the plague eventually slowed. The reasons were complex. Populations had decreased, reducing transmission. Some survivors developed partial immunity, and communities adopted rudimentary containment practices. By the early 1350s, the first wave had largely passed, though recurring outbreaks would continue for centuries. Europe emerged profoundly altered. Entire generations were gone, but survivors inherited a transformed world. The long-term effects reshaped history. Labor shortages encouraged technological innovation and changes in agriculture. Urban workers gained bargaining power. Feudal bonds weakened, gradually giving rise to more flexible economic systems. Some historians argue that these changes helped lay the groundwork for the Renaissance by redistributing wealth and encouraging new ideas. Universities expanded medical study, slowly moving toward observation and evidence rather than superstition. The catastrophe forced societies to rethink how communities functioned and how knowledge was pursued. Beyond Europe, the plague affected regions across the Middle East and parts of Asia, disrupting trade networks and political stability. Major cities experienced demographic collapse similar to Europe's, reminding historians that the Black Death was not a regional tragedy, but a global event connected by commerce and human movement. It demonstrated centuries before modern globalization how deeply interconnected civilizations already were. Eyewitness accounts from the time reveal both despair and resilience. Writers described empty marketplaces, silent streets, and the constant fear of infection. Yet they also recorded acts of compassion, caregivers who stayed with the sick despite danger, neighbors who shared food, and communities that rebuilt after unimaginable loss. Humanity endured, even when institutions faltered. The Black Death remains one of history's most important turning points because it exposed both the vulnerability and adaptability of human civilization. It revealed how quickly established systems could collapse when faced with an unseen biological threat. At the same time, it accelerated social, economic, and intellectual changes that reshaped the medieval world into something new. In the centuries that followed, advances in medicine, sanitation, and scientific inquiry would gradually emerge from lessons learned through suffering. Today, historians and scientists continue to study the pandemic using archaeology, genetics, and historical records. Mass graves confirm the scale of mortality, while modern analysis of ancient DNA has identified the bacterium responsible, solving mysteries that medieval physicians could never have imagined understanding. The story of the Black Death is therefore not only about death, but about knowledge, how humanity moves from fear toward understanding. When civilization seemed closest to collapse, society did not disappear. Instead, it transformed. The pandemic shattered old structures but opened paths to change, reminding us that history's darkest moments often become catalysts for renewal. The Black Death stands as a warning from the past that disease can reshape the world as powerfully as war or revolution, and that human survival has always depended on adaptation, cooperation, and the search for truth in the face of the unknown.